In 2007, Nissan shocked the world with this, the GT-R. This car was so ahead of its time, if this car came out today, we would be bouncing and raving about. Its timeless design, which has aged incredibly well, and the power it produces too. It will still keep up and beat new cars in its class today. Now the first thing I want to start with today is this, probably one of the best engines produced in the 21st century, and it's a 3.8 litre V6 engine, twin turbo, which has been handcrafted by race engineers, or shall I say Takumi, which translates to master craftsman, and in this case this has been hand built by Nobumitsu Gozu. Good job, Nobumitsu Gozu. Anyway, the original figures on this car is 542 horsepower and 630 Newton meters of torque. But that's not the case of this engine. It's been finished off by AC Speedtech and it produces around 750 brake horsepower. Original figures, Nissan say 2.8 seconds 0 to 60. Obviously it's tuned and we're going to get quicker. Let's find out. Before we launch it, I just want you to appreciate how wide these rear tyres are. Are you ready? 345 width tyres, and the standard like 285. So if we do not get grip, I don't know what else will. So it's time to launch the Nissan GT-R from 0 to 60, and I'm super excited for this. Oh my god, 750 horsepower and one of the quickest cars ever made. Did you know the Nissan GT-R was one of the first production cars to feature launch control and a dual clutch transmission? So we've got everything in R. We've got the gearbox in automatic, and I'm going to hold down left on the brake. We're just going to try run one first with the traction control on and see what we get. 3.98. The rear end just spun up so much. Yes, we're going to have to get some more heat into the tyres now. Right, on to run number 2. Right, that should have let some heat into the tyres. Let's try run number 2. That's better. 3.36. There we go, that's half a second off already. Is it going to be third time lucky? Let's find out. Oh, so close. 2.99, we're getting there, we're sub 3 seconds already. We've had a few goes, we cannot beat the McLaren, but it's third place in the Driven Plus leaderboard, which is unbelievable, really is. Sub 3 second car, Nissan GT-R, still in 2024. This is one of the best rear ends of any performance car ever made. I love the fact that the exhaust pipes match the lights. GT-R badge, what GT-R stands for? Gran Turismo Racing. I want to hear what 750 brake horsepower sounds like. Driver, I want it louder. I don't just need earplugs, I need a mask because the smell of petrol is unreal. So why should you buy the GT-R? Well, I think it's one of them cars you have to buy before you die, and I think at least one point in your life you have to experience the Nissan GT-R if you're a petrol head. And I think they're at a price point now where they've taken their depreciation, they've done their loss. How much more can they possibly drop? We'll never get a car like this again. The best thing about this car is its engine. There's no hiding away from it. This V6 is an absolute beast, and they're very, very tunable. How often do we see these going 1,000 brake horsepower plus? You wouldn't be surprised if I said this was running 1,000 brake horsepower, would you? Because of how often we see it. But this is tuned. Obviously, it's running 750 brake horsepower-ish. And I tell you, it's an absolute beast, which just shows the level of engineering Nissan went into to make this engine. And that does bring me on to one little problem on the GT-R. Pretty much 99% of them is tuned. It's really hard to come by a standard one. Having said that, I would still buy a tuned one, don't get me wrong. And if you're going to buy one, make sure it's done right, which is the case of this one. Craig has set this up brilliant, and I'll tell you what, are you ready? But the Takumi engineers didn't just build an engine good for 500-600 horsepower, they built an engine good for 2,000-3,000 horsepower. Now this is a 2014 model, and by then the GT-R had been in production for almost 7 years. So what differences had they made to the engine? Well, it had new fuel injectors which increased throttle response. I mean, it's hard for me to comment on a car's throttle response with 700 plus brake horsepower, but in case you're wondering, yes, it's very fast and responsive. Wow! The original top speed of the GT-R was 196 miles per hour, and I'm pretty sure this is a 200-mile-an-hour car anyway, by the fact that it's running this sort of power. But it was the car that offered supercar performance in a 4-seater sports car. Nissan worked with Brembo and gave them 6 piston calipers on the front and 4 piston calipers on the rear, and these are surrounded by these lovely 20-inch upgraded alloys which are Advan GT racing wheels. Yes, that's a good mod, Craig, and another good mod are these discs. They've been upgraded, larger surface area, good stopping force. So the GT-R does give you an Atessa system, which is an all-wheel drive system, and this car will step out on you. You have to be careful. That's because it is rear-wheel biased. 98% of the power gets sent to the rear, obviously 2% then gets sent to the front. However, when required, up to a maximum of 50% gets sent to the front wheels. So you'll never be short of grip in the GT-R. And this car is an absolute beast. Just listen to this. And the downshifts, listen. Oh yes, that V6 is godly. Oh my God, there's only one word for this car: Godzilla. The GT-R had a nickname called Godzilla. This was due to it being Japanese and killing everything in its path. This car is now 10 years old, and from the outside it's aged incredibly well. Come to the inside and it's starting to show its age. That's because all these manufacturers are starting to do all these button deletes nowadays. But talking about the buttons, you get good old conventional buttons, and they're really easy to find, which is what you'd like, and it's all a driver-focused cabin. The steering wheel, I love, has been upgraded with all this forged carbon. It's great to hold as well. These paddles have been upgraded. They're column-mounted, but they're really long, so wherever you put your hands, they're there to change. And behind the steering wheel, you've got this massive instrument cluster as well. And the main component of that is that massive rev gauge, and you know when it's a driver's car, when that is the main component, which we like. Thank you, Nissan. And these seats, these Recaro seats, are really hugging and snug. They do hold you whilst you go round a corner, and the use of leathers is really good as well. So Nissan, what a great job you did. But it also took Nissan 5 years to develop the R35. But those 5 years led to the success of one of the best sports cars the world has ever seen. Unfortunately, we can't get the GT-R in the UK anymore, but Nissan are still to this day making the GT-R, which is only available to the Japan market with a few design tweaks. But the fundamentals are still there, which goes to show how far ahead this car was in its time. This car came out in 2007, 2024, 17 years, it's still in production. That's madness. And if you're planning to buy one, you're not just buying a fast Nissan, you're buying an engineering masterpiece. It was the car that beat the 911 Turbo in 2007 from 0 to 60. But Nissan wasn't done there. Oh no, they went on to set a lap record of the Nürburgring, beating the 911 Turbo, of 7 minutes, 38 seconds. Oh, this car is just history. When Nissan released the GT-R, it was one of the first production cars to feature a dual clutch transmission, and even by today's standards, it's absolutely spot on. And this was a 6-speed auto, even chugging along at slow speeds here. It's so fluid, really responsive, and then you put your foot down and go down the gears. And the changes are faster than a Ferrari Enzo. Talking of quick, the steering response as well is absolutely spot on. It's quick, it's responsive, but it's not just the quickness of it, it's the feeling of it. That's thanks to it having a hydraulic fluid system. And when you compare it to the electric systems which most cars get nowadays, you forget how good these systems are. It's spot on.
Thank you for watching, and I'd like to say a massive thanks to Craig for lending me his beautiful car.